Hi, welcome to the third of our webinars on bush survival and managing in times of stress. In this webinar, I'm going to look at the strategic planning process. And again, let me put up a slide for you. That's just me. Planning in bush survival actually occurs at two phases. The first of those phases is actually before we even enter the bush or go out in the field. And it's a pre-planning phase. And much of bush survival training and instruction is around this phase. And there's a saying in bush survival that extends to many other activities as well, and that is failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So there's a very, very important part of bush survival around the pre-planning. Then there's another phase of strategic planning inside bush survival, and that's actually when we find ourselves in a moment or a time of crisis, and how we plan to extract ourselves from that situation. And bush survival again teaches that not having a plan is just not an option. You must have a plan. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a technique for building a strategic plan in a bush survival situation. It's going to look as if it's primarily focused on the second aspect of survival, which is planning once you're in the situation, but it also has application to the first phase, which is planning before you get yourself in the situation. So let's have a look at the technique. And the technique is called STOP. And STOP basically stands for S. S stands for you stop, you clear your head, you relax, you make a cup of tea before you do anything else. Once you've done that, then you think clearly through your situation, you think about the ramifications, the connections, you just give some good time to thinking through your situation. Once you've done that, you then observe, and you observe your surroundings, and you're looking for things like resources, potential location of resources, potential rescue, flight paths, all sorts of things you're observing around yourself. Once you've done that, and that's basically the data collection phase, you then actually start planning. So it's a simple technique. It's called STOP, and I've used it myself on a couple of occasions when I've foolishly found myself in a situation without water or lost in the bush, or some other situations arisen. I've found it incredibly effective, and I think it's something that we can use not only in bush survival, but across all forms of strategic planning. Before I leave this webinar, however, I just want to look at one final aspect of strategic planning, and that is when you've done your STOP and you've actually come up, rather than with one plan, but multiple plans, all which seem to have some validity. And I now want to show you how in bush survival we teach people to select a plan out of the three possible plans. And it's called the rule of three decision making, and it's the basis that the military use for appreciations. It's taught in the US Marines, and it's called the rule of three. And basically what it says is narrow your options down to three potential solutions. Once you've got three potential solutions, you then simply work through each solution, and against each solution you develop a series of pros and cons. You don't over dwell on the development of these pros and cons. You just pick up the main things that hit you straight off as being the pros and cons for that scenario. Once you've completed for that plan, once you've completed pros and cons for the first plan, you do pros and cons for the second plan, pros and cons for the third plan. Once you've done that, you then actually pick one of those plans, and having picked one of those plans, you then you stick with it. Now, the only reason you would vary from that plan is if other data is introduced. So, for example, if your plan is to walk on a certain bearing to a certain location where you believe that you can find water, bearing in mind that water is one of your high priorities, then you would stick to that plan until, for example, you may come across a windmill by chance, and then that would allow you to change a plan because you've got new data. But you don't change off your original plan until you have new data. So look, there's a few thoughts on strategic planning in bush survival. Using the method called STOP to develop the plan. Having developed the plan, if you've got a couple of options, use the the rule of three decision-making process, and then off you go, and you'll be right. So look, I hope you found that of use. Look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day. See you later.